So what if the entire way we talk about politics, this whole idea of left versus right, is actually built on a mistake?
That's the central claim, yeah.
We treat them like these two, timeless philosophies in a constant battle.
Right.
But the authors of The Myth of Left and Right, Verlaine and Hiram Lewis, they looked for that core philosophy and, well, they found something else entirely.
They found shifting coalitions and just fierce tribal loyalty.
Exactly. So our mission in this deep dive is to really get to the heart of their argument. We want to pull out the key insights from the book that might just, fundamentally change how you see ideology and all the polarization around us.
Right, and this is a nonfiction work. It sits at the intersection of politics, psychology, and media literacy, really. It's for anyone trying to make sense of our world and this idea that every single issue has to be forced onto a simple, two-sided spectrum.
Okay, so let's start with that historical piece, because the book really stresses that left and right aren't some ancient concepts.
Not at all. In American politics, they only really took hold in the early 20th century. And the crucial part is that the bundle of issues tied to each label is always changing.
Always. I mean, think about the last century. The Democratic and Republican parties basically swapped their entire regional bases, their coalitions.
Yeah.
The whole map just flipped.
But the label stayed the same. And that's the implication for you, the listener. It reframes everything. Those neat little two-column charts you see online, liberal versus conservative.
Yeah, I know the ones.
The book argues those are just historical snapshots. They show how interest groups were aligned at one specific moment in time. They're not some eternal, coherent philosophy.
Which brings us to, I think, the real core of the book, this tension they explore. Why do we cluster together politically in the first place? Is it philosophy,
Yeah.
The essentialist theory?
Right, this idea that it's about a deep belief in, say, equality versus hierarchy.
Or is it something more
Yeah.
social?
And that's where they land, the social theory. They look at lab experiments, they look at history, and the evidence just fits the social theory so much better. The aha moment is realizing the whole process is backward.
What do you mean backward?
People don't start with a philosophy and find a party. They first join a tribe, maybe through family or friends or one single issue they care about, and then they adopt the rest of the tribe's positions.
Wait, so people invent their moral worldview after they've already picked a team? That sounds a little cynical.
It can sound that way, but it's really more about identity than cynicism. Once you're part of that group, the psychological drive is to defend the group's platform, even if it has contradictions.
Got it.
History shows it. The issue bundles are constantly shifting, but the underlying tribal identities, they stay pretty fixed.
So if identity is driving the train, what's the consequence of that?
Well, the book argues it encourages something called political monism.
Monism.
Yeah, it's this belief that every single issue, from monetary policy to, school curriculums, has to be reduced to that single axis, that there's a single correct side.
And that's dangerous.
Extremely. The studies they cite show that when people think this way, they get more hostile, they get less accurate about what their opponents actually believe, and they become willing to sacrifice their own principles just to make sure their side wins.
Which connects directly to media literacy, polarization, all the things we see today.
Absolutely.
So what's the alternative they recommend?
They push for intellectual humility and what they call granular politics.
Granular politics, so breaking it down.
Exactly. Instead of asking which side are you on, you treat each issue on its own terms. The goal becomes seeking the truth on that specific issue, not just winning for your team.
So you start to see the parties for what they really are, not these philosophical monoliths, but
just sprawling, evolving coalitions of different interest groups. I mean, think about it. Today, views on taxes and guns seem completely linked to one side. But in other eras, or even in other countries today, they're often totally separate issues. It proves the bundle is artificial.
So the big lesson here is to shift our own focus.
Yeah.
To move away from that blanket team affiliation.
And towards specific policies. You stop asking which side am I on and start asking what's the actual evidence for this policy and what are the trade-offs I'm willing to accept.
That's a powerful shift.
So here's a final thought to leave you with, right from the book's core idea. How might the debates in your own life at work with family look different if no one was allowed to use the words left, right, liberal, or conservative?
You have to justify every stance on its own merit.
Exactly. Something to think about the next time you see a political headline.